Now that you've had our annual membership update, we're going to jump right in to the meaty part of why we're here and introduce our panel. I'm going to quickly just run over some housekeeping so that nothing gets missed. There's a lot of us here on the webinar today. So if you have any questions that you're hoping our panelists to address, if you can please type them into the Q&A. That is the section we're going to be paying attention to at the end portion to see if we can answer as many live questions as we can. You're still welcome, of course, to use the chat. That's mainly going to be information amongst yourselves. So I just don't want any important information lost. And of course, many of you submitted questions ahead of time. So we do have that list. I'm going to be pulling from it today when we're going through our town hall portion. So without further ado, we have Damon Knox, who is, of course, your president this year in 2023. We have our CTO joining us, Pepper-Martens. Hello. And of course, our head of MLS is Bixler, also there from SFAR today. So I am going to ask Damon, if you can give us a little context for why we're here today, just a little background information so that everybody on this webinar, we can all start out with the same information and knowledge base.
Of course, Vanessa. As realtors, we know that the MLS is the backbone of our business, and the disruptions in mid-August that significantly impacted our ability to do our jobs on a day-to-day business, on a day-to-day level. Today, the panel is going to discuss and address your concerns and outline our path moving forward in the aftermath of the attack. And it was a cyber attack on a vendor. We need to separate that in a grand scheme so you understand that this is a third party that is not an in-house. There is some confusion surrounding that with some of our membership. This is our software provider, Rapattoni, and they were locked out of their systems during the cyber attack. First, some good news. Most of the functionality of the system is up. About 88% of the photos were restored. And as Walt mentioned, and in other discussions that I've had with Jay and HUD, there are continuing to be updates that Rapattoni is doing on the back end to fully restore the historic photos that are still currently missing from the MLS. And at some point, we will be able to give you an update once there has been an audit done and we move towards a full recovery of the system. We're encouraged by these steps that Rapattoni is taking, and we'll continue to work with them until we have as full a restoration process as we possibly can. Now, let's talk about the difficulties we're facing. As you're aware, this cyber attack paralyzed a large portion of the real estate industry. Agents couldn't add listing or adjust prices, and accessing current listings for showings became a very, very difficult process, which means we could not do our jobs very well. From the beginning of the situation, as a board, we understood that the urgency and the gravity of the situation. And when Rapattoni was unable to provide us with very much information, we knew we had to take matters into our own hands. At the time when nothing was available from Rapattoni, we were looking for workarounds to provide options so that you could maintain continuity with your business and your clients. That's when SFAR realized that advancing works in progress with Zenlist could serve as an interim platform that we could use to restore these essential functions to your business. Zenlist promptly modified their existing platform to offer a more comprehensive service experience with just 3 days, and they demonstrated their commitment to us and yours as partners within the MLS space in helping us to get back to business and you working with your clients. At the time of crisis, we looked at every opportunity to improve our situation, and rather than sitting idle waiting for our MLS to guide us, Zenlist solution was the best shot we had at bringing something usable up fast. Our response to the cyber attack required a significant amount of effort and financial resources. Although we didn't cause the problem with the MLS, we needed to solve the problem of how to work for you and your clients. By taking this action as a board, we were able to mitigate some of the losses caused by this interruption. Recall from Walt's slides that members managed to edit over 700 listings for over 1.1 $1.127 billion in sellable volume. That's a lot of business. And this was also during two of the slowest weeks of the year when we were down. It was in the middle of August, prior to the Labor Day holiday, and thank God we had this solution. While we acknowledge this solution didn't work for everybody, it certainly worked for many of our members.
All right, thanks, Damon. So I've got a big list of questions here, so I'm actually going to just jump right into it. And so I'm going to start with our first question here. It's about MLS. I'm going to give it to you, HUD. Does SFAR run its own MLS system?
That's a great question. And no, we don't. We, like many MLSs across the country, this is not any unique situation where we made a decision to work with one of the leading service providers in the MLS technology industry. And that is, of course, Rapattoni. We know that. In retrospect, after this outage, we know that, we need to be looking at alternatives. And Jay and I and Vanessa and Damon are going to talk a little bit about those alternatives. We'll definitely do more of a deeper dive in a week on Friday the 13th, when we have more details, lots of graphics and things like that. So yes, to answer your question, Vanessa, no, we do not run Rapattoni. We work with Rapattoni and their technicians on a weekly, daily basis to make updates and changes. But in terms of answering that question directly, no, we do not own or run our own MLS system.
Okay, great. So if we're not running our own MLS, maybe even Jay could speak to this. Is there anything else that Rapattoni runs for us? Was there anything else affected during the cyber attack?
Yeah, that's another great question. And I think members sometimes think that Rapattoni is only the MLS system that we vend to them. It's actually also our software that we use internally to manage the membership body. So when you join, when you terminate, your ethics, all that stuff, we track it all, and we submit a lot of that statistical information to CAR and NAR, and we analyze it ourselves. We also use that data to track things like your association dues billing, and even some of the things like classes and committees are tracked in it. So Rapattoni also provides us with that system. And so when the system went dark, when Rapattoni was no longer vending services to us for that 2 weeks, we actually lost access to all of our membership data internally too. So it was a pretty broad attack on us through that third party. No one attacked us directly, but it did take down not only our MLS system, but also our association management system too.
Yeah, sounds like absolutely everyone was affected, even our staff, those that were not realtors.
Yeah, to that point exactly. There were days where sometimes the membership team literally couldn't move. They couldn't do anything. And then once we had portions of it brought back online, all of a sudden they were swamped because they had to address all the queues and stuff. So I hope members understand that we did our best to try to get back to everyone as promptly as we possibly could. We definitely know it could have been better. If we'd have had 3 times the staff, we would have, been 3 times more efficient. But we were literally, handcuffed with no tools. And then, okay, here's your management tool again. And then we had to really turn everyone on full bore, which is why we all worked a bunch of overtime.
Well, really difficult time for everyone. Nobody was enjoying those 2 weeks, but thanks for giving some clarity. Okay, so this is actually talking about our membership. So I'm going to give the question to Damon. A member, oops, sorry, I'm having trouble reading here. There we go. A member wrote in, what's the breakdown of our dues and what do they go towards? So for example, CAR and NAR versus what stays with SFAR. And then how about MLS fees? Are they commingled with local association dues and expenses, or are they put in a separate bucket?
That is a really good question. And this is something we talk about year over year, typically at this forum, whether it's live online or in person. But your MLS fees are $174 a quarter. Jay's got an amazing graphic right here for you, which means that you're paying $696 per year. And those fees are not commingled with your dues. There is a separation of church and state there. The fees are for the technology licenses that we use, and that goes to pay for everything that we have across all of our technology platforms, not just the MLS component of it. As you can see, NAR from the next slide, the NAR CAR take and the SFAR take from our actual dues goes to pay for all of the benefits that we get through our membership with these affiliations. Most of that has to do with policy, fighting legislation, like you heard from Jay Chang earlier, and a lot of that goes to advocacy for the housing rights of all of our clients. So those are constantly under attack, as Jay said. And, you know, NAR is a giant policy board, effectively. It's the largest trade organization in the United States with still over 1.5 million members. And what we do on that level is advocate for home ownership. I think that's about the easiest way to break that down right now. If anybody has anything to follow up on that, feel free to put it in the comments. But as far as the money that you're paying for subscription dues to CAR, NAR, and SFAR versus the dues you're paying for all of the technologies provided through SFAR MLS, that's the easiest way to break down those fees, that fee structure for you.
All right, thank you. That was very clear. Hopefully that helped people. I actually have a follow-up question that came in. This one I might actually punt to HUD and Jay. So they're asking, how do we use this money? If we have so much money, I think they mean SFAR, where is it going? How are we using it?
Sure. Do you want me to tackle that in the broad strokes, and then maybe HUD can drill down a little bit?
That'd be perfect.
So during Mark's Treasurer report, he presented this information here. Let me just pull it back up again. I think it's worth a while for us to look at together. Let me find my share screen here. And again, thank you to Mark and the accounting department for pulling all this together for us. So the fees that we bring in for MLS and technology get distributed amongst a number of different programs and benefits, not just the MLS service itself, but all the things that plug into it. An MLS system doesn't really function without its property database underneath it. You may know that as Realist. We've also got a number of other programs that plug into it that just provide you with more functionality. I know Cloud CMA is quite popular. It gets quite a large body of use. And then outside of that, there's also infrastructure technology. So the MLS revenues also has to cover things like our data shares and our ability to set up databases that transmit data to third parties. All of that infrastructure has cost and maintenance, and it's only gotten larger as we've moved into the future. When Walt and I started working in the MLS industry for Point 2 back in 2009, there were only about 3 content distributors. Well, today we serve data feeds to over 200 locations, and each of those locations requires work, communication, sometimes contract negotiation. All of that requires resources and systems and staff time. And so your MLS fees cover a large body of all of that work that has to get done. HUD, is there anything you'd like to add to what we do with MLS money?
Well, sure. I mean, we do. It's our obligation to maintain several months of runway to cover those costs. It would be unfortunate if we're only able to, sign a 6-month contract with a vendor because that's all we can do. So one of the things to think about there. So when you think about your MLS fees, there's a lot of member benefits and technology that Jay just mentioned that are built into that. And it's also relevant to discuss what did not fail during the cyber attack. Jay and I often go back and forth on this idea of put everything in one basket or diversify. I think it's obvious that we should diversify our technology so that our front ends are not run by the same company as the back end. Speaking of our front end, the Clarity dashboard, that's our single sign-on dashboard. Many of you have at your own companies have a single sign-on product as well. But the Clarity dashboard was live and still running, which meant you could get to Realist, RPR, InfoSparks, all of our forms platforms, and of course Zenlist. Unfortunately, the data feeds were run out of Rapattoni services. We have addressed that, and moving forward, we're moving all of our data feed partners, this includes the brokers and all of the vendors that you guys all use on a day-to-day basis, to a third-party platform, so that in the event of another situation like this, we can easily pivot and have everybody on this data feed, another data feed system. In this case, it's called the Bridge API, which is how we were able to pivot at least data flowing to Zillow and Redfin. Now we have the ability to change that up. But yeah, the main point I think is that it's not just the Rapattoni MLS system, it's multiple products, and those products are expensive, but they're also required for you guys to do your business. Thank you.
Yeah. I'm so happy to hear that we are already pivoting to a parallel system, and kind of crazy that it was being built during the crisis. I'm so glad you guys were on top of it and moved so quickly. All right, I have a big hairy question. I don't even know how many times this question was sent in. So I'm going to give this to Damon here. Are we, and I'm assuming that means members, are we going to be getting any sort of credit due to the downturn?
Yeah, and let me preface this with, we are being 100% transparent in any and all information we're giving on this. So while this may not be the answer that a lot of people want, it's 100% the truth. And I think that you'll understand our rationale behind the decisions that we're making moving forward. The board has contractually only received a credit for Rapattoni for the downtime as a percentage of what we pay for their service as part of the larger MLS fee that you do pay. The total credit was only $29,000. And when you spread that across 4,600 members, that's less than $6 per person for the 2-week outage that they were contractually obligated to give us money back for. And in reality, it feels insulting going back to membership and saying, here is a $6 credit. That's not what we wanted to do. And the board of directors, your board of directors that you all voted for, concluded that it would make far more sense to turn around and immediately put that credit and those funds into efforts to make improvements outside of the Rapattoni system, i.e. these redundancies, for a more robust and secure technology platforms so that we don't have disruptions like this in the future. And the board decided not to issue the credit. So I know that's going to upset some people, but this is what your board has decided at this moment in time.
Thanks. I know it's really difficult decisions that were all being made, and it's rough with such a small credit for so many members. All right, I'm gonna pull up our next question here. We kind of briefly talked about this, but I'm hoping maybe Jay or someone can also give us a demo that we can follow along with. Members have voiced frustration with the lack of communication, or a lot of people felt like they were not receiving information, even though we've all seen in the previous slides how much communication was being put out and it just wasn't being received. So I know there's some problems there. Is there anything that we can do to fix communication between SFAR and its members?
Yeah, I'll start here. If it's okay, Damon, I'll just start with a quick demo, and then maybe we'll pivot to a more a contextual answer, if that's okay.
Sure.
Great. So I'm just going to pull up the MLS here. I briefly showed how this would work during Walt's presentation, but I'm going to go slower this time and explain it a little bit. So from the MLS itself, if you go to your profile, yes, that's not exactly my best picture, but there are some contact fields here that aren't very important. What I want to draw your attention to is once you're on your agent profile, if you manage your contact phone numbers, this is where all the real magic happens with your contact information. We are really diligent about not providing lists of phone numbers to people. Like we don't have a way that people can obtain that. Who can get the data? Your brokerage data feeds do have some of the contact information, but generally speaking, we don't publish the information. What I would love every member to do, whoever sees this video, and hopefully anyone who sees the recording, is that they go in and they add their cell phone number by typing in the digits in these fields, and they select their phone type and set it to cellular telephone. When you set it to cell, our membership communications person internally has a way to pull all those numbers and use it in a special text messaging system. We've really tried to use that thing sporadically. We didn't want to make people feel like we were hitting them with so many text messages that it devalued the communications channel. But during the Rapattoni interruption, This was a really critical way that we were messaging. We only had about 1,200 cell numbers of our 4,600 member plus body. So if everyone came in and entered their additional phone information, cellular, telephone, cell, and then add it, you don't even have to make it your primary contact number. It could just be one of the numbers that's in your profile. But if it's labeled as your cell phone, it lets us extract it, and then we can put it into our text messaging system. For emergencies, that text messaging system is really going to be our go-to in the future. Government affairs will use it occasionally when they really need to alert the member body about an important vote. If we ever have anything that's just critical that every member knows about, we're going to use that as a channel. So by updating that information there, it'll guarantee that we can get a hold of you. You can, of course, opt out of it. There'll be a thing that says you can, I think it's stop is what you reply if you want to stop getting text messages. And we can reverse that for you. Just let us know. But please go into the MLS, and I'm going to do that one more time. So under the admin tab, when you're just like in the home system here, modify your profile. And the link is at the top. It's called Manage Contact Phones. And what we need you to do is put in the digits and then select cell phone and then click add. And once you do that, we'll have that information to get a hold of you. And so I'll pivot back to Damon. Thanks for letting me do a quick technical demo.
No,
No, I
that's
appreciate
super
that.
helpful.
Thanks. You know, the bigger issue is not just reaching everybody by cell, but making sure that your company and your personal email addresses are updated in the system as well. A lot of people have unsubscribed. Obviously, Jay said on text, people will stop receiving text by just pounding in stop in a moment of frustration. But when you unsubscribe, it prevents us from actually messaging you in the moment. And while we were trying to communicate with everybody, I think that it failed us because so many people had previously unsubscribed from messaging from the association that they were not receiving anything. And then they got very upset over the fact that we were not directly in communication with them. I'm not blaming agents. These things happen. We forget when we might hit a spam button or a trash filter on an email previously. These things happen, but moving forward, it's really in everybody's best interest to make sure that we as an association can contact you, especially in the case of an emergency like this. So again, please proselytize to anybody that you can in your brokerages, out in the field. Make sure that the contact information is up to date, because not only were we using SF Social, Jay and HUD were updating the Fresh Desk site that they use internally with all of the outage plans and the updates on that. And again, that thing got over 14,000 hits. If you look at the amount of messaging that was done in the 35,000 messages we've put out through the association recently, you'll notice that 42% went for just the messages on the videos, and then the other 14% were from people looking at the Fresh Desk responses to the cyber attack. So, you know, 59% or roughly 56% were issues directly related to the cyber attack on Rapattoni in the messaging that we've sent out. So we were reaching people. We just weren't reaching everybody. You know, we try not to, but we wanted to make sure that even on the Facebook open forum, that we were responding to questions. That is an open forum where you can discuss anything. We don't go there to censor, we go there to answer. And any question that we could answer in real time, we were trying to answer in real time with full transparency. But we made a decision that we were not going to give you false promises. Some other clients of Rapattoni's were given hard dates and setting unrealistic expectations with their membership. And unfortunately, when Rapattoni did not meet those specific dates, the association looked bad, and we weren't willing to break promises to you as members. So we did not feel that messaging out information that we didn't think was deemed accurate would be in our best interests. It would have created a liability for us, and we did not want to set you up for failure. We wanted to be as transparent with you throughout this entire process as possible.
Okay. So it sounds like if I'm a member and I'm not getting texts, which I get the texts, I'm going to say it's probably less than 3 a month, except when we were during the crisis mode
Right,
shutdown.
exactly. A little bit more.
Okay. So a few a month. If we're not getting those, we now know how to change it through the MLS. But putting our cell phone number in there does not publicly share it. That's just giving it to the association so we can get text updates. If I am a member and at some point I marked SFAR's emails as spam because I didn't want to receive the once a week update on messages, how would I get those emails to come back to me again? Is there someone I need to email, Jay?
Yeah, there is. So really you can email any department and they will funnel the messaging to our communications. Christy Dodge is really awesome at updating things really quickly. So if you email MLS or membership or even communications at sfrealtors.com, that will eventually make its way to Christy and Genevieve, and they'll make sure that they get you resubscribed, or they'll take you out of the unsubscribed list. And I think the text messaging system works the same. They can find your phone number. If you just email us and tell us which cell number it is, we can go in and find it and we can take it out of the not list.
Awesome. I'm going to ask one of our webinar helpers to drop those email addresses into the chat in case anyone wants to just cut and paste that in.
Yeah, but really anybody at the association will try their best to get you resubscribed. We all really want you to get that communication. The other channel that we use quite a bit is the office liaison report, which we send to brokers, office managers, and realtor managers. So hopefully that communication is still getting through. If you know you're in charge of an office or you help manage a team inside an office and you'd like to get that office liaison information, it's our way of making sure that the leadership individuals in various companies have the best information week to week, and we publish that weekly. So if you are managing an office and maybe you recently took over that position and you're not getting that email, also just let communications at sfrealtors.com know, and we will get you on that list too.
Okay. I'm going to jump back into our questions here. I think this one is also probably going to be for you, Jay. Someone wrote in, during the shutdown with Rapattoni, why didn't we just pivot into another system like Paragon or Matrix that wasn't affected?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And it's a particularly good question because of course we're in a data share where those other systems would have had most/all of our data, right? So it would have been logical, except for a few key things. One of which is if you want to convert one of those other systems that's in place already to allow our membership into it, well, that might only take a little while, but now you're in a foreign system that looks different and behaves different. So now you're still basically looking at something you don't understand, and you'll have to do some heavy lift with that. Plus, the nuances of how SFAR works, the MLS for SFAR, things like the districts 1 to 10, our tour report, none of that functionality works the same way in any of those other systems. So even though we could have maybe given people access, probably the only thing you would have been able to do effectively would have been to run a search and maybe email those listings out to your clients, but the client information wouldn't even be there. You'd be rebuilding your contacts from scratch too. Long story short, there were ways we could have pivoted to either the two systems that were sort of neighboring us from different vendors, but none of those would have met 90% of your use cases. You already had the ability to search on Zillow. You had the ability to search on RPR. As HUD and Walt both mentioned, because the Clarity dashboard didn't go down, you had access to all these other search databases. So the real problem was, how were you going to be able to edit if you had an active listing? And none of those systems were going to be able to let us do that. And how are you going to be able to send that listing to a destination? And those systems wouldn't have been able to do that without a lot of heavy lift and configuration. So that's why it didn't make sense for us to try to get those two technologies involved in the mix. We already had been working with Zenlist on some pilot concepts with doing editing, and it turned out that in a matter of days, we were able to get that into a production state. But I'd let HUD elaborate on that work if he wants to chime in.
Yeah, I mean, it's more of what did agents need at that time? They needed distribution. I mean, what they needed is an MLS, right? Well, we couldn't provide that at that moment. So we went with the best opportunity that was right in front of us. But yeah, I mean, just because we couldn't pivot at that point, or just because we couldn't move to a Matrix or Paragon MLS system, doesn't mean our eyes are not wide open onto the choices that are there. And that's another question down the road that I'll get to in a moment.
Okay. Actually, let's make the
Do it right
moment now. I
All
see someone's typed in a similar question, and I had some previously submitted. So why don't we just ask, are we sticking with Rapattoni? What is the plan for the future? What does our contract look like?
Do you want to start? And then I saw something in the Q&A. I'm going to speak.
Absolutely. I'll start with a contract. Well, as it happens, and this is I always get a chuckle out of this, although it was a little bit unfortunate, certainly for the Rapattoni folks. But August 14th was the day that Rapattoni was going to fly up and talk about renegotiating our contracts, because both are up for renewal. Both the Rapattoni MLS and the back-end MMS office systems are up for renewal. We all know what happened during those 2 weeks, so I don't need to elaborate there. But I was just at CMLS conference this week, and I started the first negotiation, where Jay and I started the first negotiations with Rapattoni. And I can guarantee you there's quite a few concessions that we are looking for. One of those, that is one of the most important ones, is we are not locked into a multi-year contract with Rapattoni. Why would we not want to be locked into a multi-year contract with Rapattoni? Because the future is somewhat unwritten with with their company, and we want to make sure that although switching and pivoting to a new MLS system tomorrow would be incredibly painful for not only us but the members, of course, we have an opportunity to hold back the water for a little bit and renegotiate a great contract with Rapattoni that puts us in the power play position while we do what we're going to be doing and continue to do, which is look at everything that's available. First of all, building a parallel MLS backup service. Number one, making sure that our data is protected, redundant, and available in what we call a distributed architecture. We already have some partners that we can work with, but we are talking to everybody. I talked to many different vendors and MLSs and technologies while I was at the CMLS conference to basically have that discussion. And I will tell you, the entire industry is talking about this right now. They're talking about redundancy, they're talking about backups, they're talking about alternatives. So there is a lot of opportunity, not only for these vendors, but for us as an MLS, to pivot long-term, not short-term. So another part of that is, I mentioned earlier, that it's not going to be one system. It'll be, and no single point of failure. So there's a lot to be learned from this, but also I believe it's a really strong opportunity for us to change the course and build a better MLS and a better experience for our agents.
Awesome. Jay, did you have anything you wanted to elaborate
Yeah.
on?
There was a really great question asked pretty much at the top of the presentation, something along the lines of, why wasn't there an offsite backup? And two, how come MLSs look the way they do? Why don't they look better? Might have been Fred that asked this question. And so I'll address both of those. First, the offsite backup. Cyber attacks, just a word about how they kind of work. Cyber attacks don't happen where someone got in this morning and at 9 o'clock that morning, they got in at 10:30, they shut you down. That's not what they do. What they do is they get access to a system at a very low level, and then through the mechanisms of a little bit of human engineering and a little bit of systems flaw, they take advantage of weaknesses in systems. They continue to elevate their permissions and their ability to see an internal system until they basically have what's called total visibility. So now that they know what the internal systems look like and they can see what the backup strategy is, that's when a bad actor chooses to intervene, because now they've got you. They don't just have your live systems, they have potentially some, if not all, of your backup systems. So perpetrators aren't in a hurry. They know that there's no money to be made in 5 minutes, but they know that there's potentially huge sums of money to be made if they're patient. So they will wait. And we don't know the details specifically, but we have an understanding that not only were the live systems compromised, but the immediate sort of like hot failovers, those were also compromised. Now, the really deep off-site backups existed and they were used, which is why we actually got our system back in 2 weeks instead of it being, well, I guess we have nothing. Let's ask everybody to put in their phone number for the first time ever. Instead, we're just asking you to update it. Which means that we were able to get the data back from those offsite backups. That did work. Rapattoni succeeded in that respect. But they had to restore that those backups onto freshly wiped out servers, in some cases brand new servers. They made a huge capital investment on making sure that their server infrastructure that they were restoring the data onto was the best infrastructure available, which is why we got back up and running in 2 weeks, not in 2 months. The second part of the question was, why do MLS systems look the way they do? We agree completely that if we look at Paragon or we look at any of the other major vendors, that we see that they all sort of look like they were evolved from 2002's thinking, right? I mean, you can even take a look at the way some MLS systems look, and you can literally point to the way it sort of formatted like it would have been in the book from 45 years ago. So we are not interested in adding more technologies to our technology footprint that have that same sort of looking back look and feel. I think you've heard HUD say this a number of times, that we're looking for something that's distributed architecture, modern UI, modern structure of the way they deploy software. So that's going to continue to be our North Star, is that we're going to follow the path that gets us better technologies that feel newer, but not at the expense of functionality. So we're going to keep Rapattoni up and running. Obviously, we're not switching anything off tomorrow. The plan is to build things alongside and eventually in front of the technologies we have today, not just simply migrate everyone from the one version we have now to a different version that we'd have to train you on. So I apologize for that being a really long answer, but
the key word is choice, right? Is redundancy and choice, right? Those two things that we're going to be focusing on. Thank you, Jay.
All right. And then let's see here. Our next question was typed in live, so looks like someone would like a little more clarification. So in terms of SFAR, CAR, and NAR requirements, people are still a little confused about the requirements for being in that and who is required to join for what. So I know, for example, in my case, my brokerage requires me to be a member of the association. So as far as I know, all of the major brokerages in San Francisco require their agents to be members of NAR, CAR, and SFAR, and that's why the majority of us hold those memberships. But is it a requirement to have that membership in order to access the MLS?
This is a great question too, and one it's got a complicated answer, but we'll tackle it. So do you need to belong to NAR to join an MLS? In California, you do not need to technically be a member of CAR or NAR in order to join a local MLS. You do need to be a licensed professional. So you must have a license through the DRE, BRE, they change their name occasionally. So you must be licensed, but you are able to get membership with an MLS in California as just what's called MLS only. Now that means you don't have access to any of the NAR member benefits. If you look at our dashboard, a number of them are actually provided to us through our membership through NAR. And a lot of the benefits that members use today, things like electronic forms and forms platforms, lots of those came to us through CAR, whether or not CAR owns them still today. But those two levels of membership and then your SFAR membership are very common for members in San Francisco because the association owns and operates the MLS here in San Francisco. That gets us a number of benefits too. I see Walt's got his hand up. He knows this stuff much better than me. So Walt, did you want to jump in and speak to this?
Yeah, let me just give a few comments. First off, Jay's correct. You do not have to be a member of the association to get MLS. That's a law that was passed several years ago that NAR had to adopt. We do operate the multiple listing service, and you would lose a lot of the benefits that you have. You couldn't use the term realtor. You wouldn't have access to the CAR forms. You wouldn't have access to the SFAR forms, and you would have limited access. Some of the services through the MLS are not provided to non-members. So there is that factor. Now, in regard to CAR and NAR, remember that NAR owns the term realtor. We have what's called the three-way agreement between NAR and the local associations and the state association nationwide. The three-way agreement says that anybody who wants to be a member of a local board pays the state and national dues also. And that is an agreement that has existed since 1907 when NAR started up. So that is something that's called the three-way agreement, and that does provide the ability to use term realtor and belong to all three. That is not something we can arbitrarily just back out of. If you back out of that, you lose all the NAR benefits and other services that they do provide. And I can tell you that just alone, the lobbying efforts of NAR and CAR both, if you use nothing, if you don't do anything else, you don't attend a program, you don't use forms, don't do anything, just those efforts on behalf of you in real estate and homeowners, frankly, is a benefit.
Okay, so that's really helpful. So hopefully that gave you guys some more clarity on things. I've been scrolling through the questions. I think there was also a point in here that Sherry was asking kind of how NAR connects directly to SFAR. For example, we all know that there is a scandal happening, as she mentioned in there, around sexual harassment, which of course is horrific and looks really bad in the public eye. Maybe Damon can explain some of this. Can you explain the differences between SFAR's association and NAR's and that?
Yeah, this is something I've been getting a lot lately. And I just want to say that SFAR is a very different model. We actually have outside professional legal counsel that handles any and all situations like this. We don't have an HR department in-house that tries to control a narrative or block anything from happening in terms of an investigation. We 100% have a policy that this is completely unacceptable behavior and it will not be tolerated. That's why we spend a lot of money when or if any of these things comes to light, and it is all handled outside of house by a neutral party so that we do not have any conflicts of interest or any smack or smear of a cover up at any level. So we are very, very hypersensitive to this based on instances that have happened globally, I'll say, on the national level. And then it was just brought to light again with NAR's policies and the fact that they do try to handle stuff in-house. What a bad idea that is. So 100% sexual harassment is not tolerated, never has been, never will be. And that's why we have this extra layer of outside counsel that we go to if something happens.
Okay, great. Yes, as you guys can imagine, just like we tell our clients that real estate is very local, so are associations. So San Francisco, we are pretty progressive in everything in terms from HR to technology. And so we try and run a very tight ship for our members here. I do know that NAR is definitely reworking how their structure and their organization works. As an association at SFAR, we have 2 directors at NAR that are very closely paying attention. It's Mark Dickow and Nina Dosange. They certainly voice on behalf of SFAR how we feel there should always be a complete no tolerance policy, and to make sure that there is outside counsel to prevent any sort of toxic inner situation at the association level.
You know, what's interesting is I saw a follow-up question someone asked about why didn't we say anything about it. You know, what's funny is we were sort of having some conversations about what do we want to say about this, and then we woke up one morning and didn't have an MLS. So it's definitely not an excuse, but it's a reason. A lot of our focus sure shifted in about the span of 3 hours when we realized, oh no, this may be weeks of no MLS. It hyper-focused everyone in the organization on one thing only, which was how do we get business continuity working again for members. So again, not an excuse, just a reason why our focus really shifted for a minute there. And we're still, as you can see today, doing a town hall about it, just getting our feet set again so that we can once again face forward and start doing the things that SFAR prides itself on, which is leading.
Yeah, it wasn't that we didn't have a lot to say on it. It's just that in the moment of crisis, leadership has to pick its battles, and instituting the best policies for getting our members back up and running, having as little disruption and as much continuity in your business as possible was our priority. And unfortunately, this never went away for us. It's why we're happy to talk about it right now. But at the same time, it did not, like Jay said, it kind of fell off of our vision board of what we needed to message out. And the other thing that we learned as an association is there is only so much social currency we have in communications with people. We can go out and answer your questions, but there's a point in time where people stop believing even the most transparent answers, and they're going to rail against any communication coming from you that contradicts what they want. So we wanted to make sure that when we were communicating clearly and effectively, and we didn't burn all of our social currency, especially online, which is a very, very easy place to go bankrupt on social currency very quickly. As we know from a lot of the stuff that we've seen online and heard in comments and forums and other places where people just espouse beliefs and it's a vacuum of contradiction. So we didn't want to do that. We didn't feel it was necessary or appropriate. And we wanted to make sure that everything we were doing was working towards putting your business back in your hands and allowing you to continue doing what you need to do.
Okay. Some really important topics. I'm really glad we were able to speak on them. I don't see anything else happening in the Q&A. I'll give it a second here or two. Hopefully we were able to give some clarity on things. The whole goal of our panel here was to try and be as transparent as possible. We are working for you. We are working with you. You are our association. We are your members. It's all commingled together. So hopefully we gave as much information as we could. I think, let's see.
There was one other question I don't know if we got to. Someone asked earlier, what's the story with photos is essentially what they were saying. HUD, where are we at with that?
So when we discovered after about 3 to 4 weeks of, it was mentioned earlier that Rapattoni did have 40 terabytes of backed up photos. It took him about 3 to 4 weeks to even pull 4 terabytes of photos, which equated to, for SFAR, 710,000 photos, which is not enough. And for Barris, something like 1.2 million. And then what we suggested, and we had suggested this in the past, again, you know, when you're dealing with a service provider, we were talking with them every single day, pushing as hard as we could, sometimes very tense conversations with them. We were able to work with RPR, which, like no other vendor, they download all the photos. Most of the photos that you see online on Redfin, on Zillow, those are simply a URL. And that is a URL, a web link back to the Rapattoni database. Doesn't really help if the Rapattoni database is down, right? So we worked with RPR, had Rapattoni connect with RPR, and they brought in another 3 million photos. We're about at 88% of photos right now. What we're hoping to do, because we were the first MLS to come back online, one of the first MLSs to come back online, Rapattoni, they're bringing all their other MLSs up right now. We have already put in a request to get an audit so we can find out what's actually missing. Once we get that audit, we can go back to other sources and import those photos again. It is not an ideal position. I don't want to sugarcoat this, but we're about at 88%. But we need to get a final audit to understand where we really are at. We do have additional resources to bring those photos in. It requires Rapattoni's resources and help to do that. Our commitment is once we are fully whole, and even until we get to that point, Jay and I are working with other providers, to build our redundancy and our backup. Well, we have to get whole before we can get there. Beyond that, that's about the most information and most up-to-date information we have on photos right now. Please do update all of your contact information because we're going to be sending out more details in the next coming weeks as we get this audit process to really find out where we're at with photos. Jay, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, just that if you had there's still going to be edge cases, so 88% is not 100. If you could please make sure that you check your coming soon listings. Anything you've entered active since the incident and forward is fine, but there are a couple of listings that were coming soon before the interruption. Some of those haven't had all their photos restored because we didn't transmit anyone's coming soon data anywhere. So please check those. And for some of the older data, if you see that you have a listing that's maybe been sold 5 years ago and you know that you wish some of the photos were there, you can let us know through the MLS team and we'll give you a hand with that.
Yeah, we can help you with that. In some cases, you can even update your photos yourself. Do not hesitate to reach out to MLS at sfrealtors.com. A lot of sort of our cleanup is around photos. And although it's not ideal, it's one of the best things you can do for the real estate community is help upload some of those photos if you have a listing. Maybe check back, as Jay said, if you had listings the last 4 or 5 years. Let's help you source those. Let's get them uploaded. Let's set them all to private, the ones that you don't want to have distributing to IDX. But let's help out your real estate community. You're part of this as well. Thank you.
Okay. And then we've mentioned a few times that, of course, that this has been recorded so that you guys can refer to it later, or you can send this to other people, to your friends, other members. Maybe if I could ask one of our webinar helpers to put the link into the chat here for where our YouTube channel is. The answer is it's going to be on SFAR's social YouTube channel. So if you already go there, if you're already a subscriber, it'll probably take a day or two for us to upload it. So it's not going to be there in 30 minutes. I apologize, but it'll be there shortly. That's where you're going to be able to view this in the future. And I just want to say, for those that were asking specifically about berries and Marin, not that we don't want to answer those questions, but of course we are SFAR, so we run our association differently. Berries is privately owned, and so those members have to, you were asking about questions, how do they access forms? They have to be a member of CAR to use CAR forms. And so that is, in Marin, it's just separate. They join CAR for forms access, and they join the private berries MLS for MLS access. But if you have any more integral questions about that and how they're run, you're going to have to direct your questions to berries in Marin. They can answer those questions for you. So hopefully we covered a lot today. I am so lucky that I had all of you guys here on the panel answering questions, even Walt popping in from his office when we needed the really heavy hitter. Thank you so much. Thank you all of you today for sticking around for such a long time. Hopefully you guys will consider this a success, and we will continue to try and provide as much accurate information in a timely manner as we can to all of you. So have a great day, and we're going to sign off now. Thanks, everyone.
Final thought. Please make sure that you do sign up and attend some of the other webinars that are happening. The next one starts in about a half hour. There is a lot of content that you would have gotten had you gone to an in-person today. We want to make sure that we still deliver on our promises to keep you educated and informed. And that's going to be these extra webinars happening throughout the rest of the month. So on behalf of the association, thank you for your time today. This video will be posted as soon as possible to the social media links that we have. And we thank you for your continued support and professionalism, and look forward to working with you in the future. From the association, thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Awesome.